I'm going to be sharing a couple of myths about workers' compensation. So I had actually bought this book from my mother, who was interested in helping with the firm. It's called Deadly Sins That Can Derail Your New York Workers' Compensation Case. Normally I wouldn't advertise a book written by competitors. This happens to be a pretty good handbook, though. So I'll just start reading the myths. The first one is, if you speak to the insurance company or write a letter explaining your case and are reasonable, you will get a reasonable response that pays you what you deserve. This doesn't happen. They're never going to pay you what you deserve. At the end of the day, they're an insurance company. Their whole end game is to pay you nothing or as little as possible. So I know there's many situations where a client will come to me and say, I have a pending workers' compensation claim. They're taking care of all my medical benefits. They seem to be really trying to take care of me. The nurse calls me all the time. My answer is always, you know what? They're taking care of you now. They don't want you to get a lawyer. They really don't, because we're just going to stick it to them. We're just going to look through all of your financials and we're going to determine that they're underpaying you. It happens more often than not. And sometimes people will retain me when it's just too late. When it's just too late for me to really do much for their case, they've already screwed it up. So in my response to this, hire a lawyer as soon as possible. You won't know that you're being gypped until I've got to go back and do a ton of repair work. The next myth is, when you are involved in a work-related accident and the insurance company calls you to ask for a statement, you have to give them a statement or you cannot receive benefits. Just don't talk to the insurance company. Anything that you need to deal with, go to court. The workers' compensation judges will take care of you, especially if you're not represented by an attorney. They're very good about that. If they think you need an attorney, they'll tell you. They'll actually adjourn the case so that you can go get an attorney. Any statements that you need to make to the insurance company can be handled in court. Do it in front of a judge, especially if you don't have an attorney. If you do it in front of a judge, they'll stop you. They'll stop you before you say something incriminating. They won't let you mess up your own case to the best that they can. The next one is, all lawyers who advertise that they handle workers' compensation cases have the same ability, tools, and experience to handle your case. This is just not true. These are all myths, so of course it's not true. But at the end of the day, there's so much more than just knowing the law. First of all, what the law says is just not what happens in practice. It is, but it looks different than what the law says it would look like. It's such a nuanced field. I know pretty much all of the practicing attorneys on Long Island that handle workers' compensation. They're just the regular attorneys. We know when there's an outsider. We know when it's someone who's not normally, we call them visitors. They're not normally at court. They're very easy to beat. They don't know what they're doing. It's just so nuanced, and it's like alphabet soup. There's just so many acronyms and so many things that need to be addressed at the first hearing. You need someone who is, for lack of a better term, specialized, though we're not allowed to call ourselves specialized. You need somebody who practices in workers' compensation. Not only are they going to know how to play the game, they're going to know all the players. They're going to know all the judges. Back in the day, judges and attorneys, they golfed together. This was not even a conflict for some reason. I know my father knows personally at least half of the judges in Garden City. And so the older people in the field really know the judges, even better than the younger people in the field. It's just a very small community. Your employer's insurance company will quickly approve and pay for the medical treatment since you were injured while working. This is an interesting one because it is technically a myth in the sense that it's absolute. They do tend to start paying for the medical treatment unless they're controverting the claim, unless they're saying absolutely not, this is not workers' compensation related. They normally do start paying the medical. Like I was saying before, they don't want you to get an attorney. So they'll start out as your best friend. They want to see you get better. It quickly changes. So in a way, this is correct. The Workers' Compensation Board will step in and protect your rights and make sure you get the benefits you are entitled to. It's a myth because they're not supposed to. In practice, they don't want you to get taken advantage of. They really do take into consideration when you're not represented by an attorney. Again, it's a small court. It's an administrative court. It's not the Supreme Court. So it's more of an insurance claim than it is a lawsuit. You're not suing your employer. You're just collecting your benefits from your employer's insurance company. The judges, like I said, they will adjourn the case for you to get a lawyer if you need one. To that extent, they'll protect your rights. The paperwork you need to file is simple and doesn't require an attorney. You need an attorney to file the paperwork. It is such a pain. It's not a pain for me, but I do it every day, all day. I'm constantly dealing in paperwork. It's an administrative law job. That means there's tons of forms. I mean, to start a case is a packet of paper. You know, you got to first fill out like the report of exactly what happened. You've got to fill out, you know, a vocational history and explain all of your job experience. You've got to submit medical reports, and those are specifically required to have a percentage of disability. Otherwise, you can't get any benefits. So there's just a whole series of things that need to be submitted. It will take you forever to parse through all of it. An attorney will do it in a half an hour. Most compensation claims are made up, fraudulent, and people would rather be on compensation and milk the system instead of working. The amount of fraud cases that I've seen is so minimal. I think in the past few years, I've seen maybe 3. This is a huge topic of conversation with the attorneys who are representing insurance companies. They'll really harp on the fact that workers' compensation fraud is a big deal. People are making up stories left and right. To be honest, most of the time, I think the most I've seen this year so far has been a client who reported that he was injured while walking his dog when in fact he was injured at work. So he lied in the opposite direction because he didn't want to get fired for filing a workers' compensation claim, which is another myth. That's not allowed to happen. Practical reality is it can happen, and then you have an employment lawsuit ahead of you, but technically it's not supposed to happen. They're not made up and fraudulent. No one wants to really milk the system. You can't get very much. The maximum amount of money you can get per week is about $930 something and change. And that's based on your weekly wages. And it's never going to be more than 2/3 of your gross pay. So it's about what you take home after taxes. That being said, it's tax-free money. So if you earn a significant amount of money and you earn, say, over $2,000 a week, you're not, 2/3 of that is going to be more than 900 and change. But ultimately, you're going to cap out at 900 and change. People don't want to be making so much less than they were making before. Those high earners are going to really try to get back to work. So that being said, there's just no reason for people to milk the system unless you make exactly the right amount of money such that 2/3 is going to get you your net pay normally, which is very, I mean, you'd have to be as a small part of the population. Most compensation claims, filing a claim is suing your employer. Like I said before, you're not suing your employer. This is their insurance policy. You're really just collecting on something they're already supposed to have. Now, if they don't have an insurance policy, technically, you're just trying to collect the money from your employer. In the same way you would for the insurance company, though. They're only liable to the same degree that the insurance company was liable. So then again, there's also penalties. So it's still not really a lawsuit against your employer, still collecting benefits, but it can get messy for the uninsured employer. Your employer will make sure you get the benefits you deserve quickly and keep your job open for your return. They just won't. They don't care. Your employer is not involved. It's really you against the insurance company. Like I said, they're just the insured. So ultimately, they're not getting involved. HR is kind of helping you fill out the initial paperwork, and then they'll step off. But the other aspect to this is that they don't have to keep your job for you. So this myth is true because there's nothing that guarantees that for you. I mean, if you think about it from the perspective of the employer, this makes sense. They need to continue operations. There's no way they could keep jobs open for everybody on workers' compensation, everyone who's injured. To an extent, they have to keep it open for you, but beyond like 90 days or something like that, they can replace you. And I mean, they have sometimes, especially if it's a smaller company. It's reasonable, but it does suck. It's true, and it sucks. Your employer will file a claim on your behalf, and you will not have to do anything. By notifying your employer, that is all you have to do. You do have to notify your employer, but there are next steps. Some HR departments will file the claim for you, and you'll get your workers' compensation case number and everything like that. Most of the time, they don't file the claim for you. They just make the incident report. That incident report's important. It proves that you provided notice, which is a requirement that you provide notice within 30 days of being injured. So it does fill that one element of the case, but it's just not enough. So in that way, you can't trust your employer. You can't trust the insurance company. You're really either going to be self-sufficient or you're going to hire a lawyer. I mean, but that's life. I have a strange feeling that's kind of everything. At the end of the day, you either hire a professional to help you or you figure it out, but you just can't rely on other people. So that's all the myths. I guess if I have more time, I can answer questions if anybody has any.